Right now, as you watch this, there are over 10,000 commercial flights in the air. Boeing 747s, Airbus A380s, tiny regional jets. They cross oceans. They fly over rainforests, deserts, war zones. They've flown over Antarctica. They've crossed the Arctic Circle at 40,000 feet in pitch darkness. But there is one place on this planet, one specific patch of sky that even the most powerful aircraft on Earth refuse to fly over. Not because of politics, not because of a government ban, but because if anything goes wrong up there, there is nowhere to go. And today, I'm going to show you exactly where it is and why crossing it could be the last thing a plane ever does. Let's start with something that sounds completely normal. You book a flight from London to Bangkok. You recline your seat. You order your little cup of ginger ale. You open the window shade and stare out at the clouds somewhere over Central Asia. What you don't know, what the airline doesn't tell you, is that your pilot is flying one of the most carefully plotted routes on Earth. A route specifically designed to avoid certain airspace. And it's not airspace controlled by any country. It's controlled by something far older and far more dangerous than any government. Nature. We're talking about the Himalayas, the roof of the world, the largest mountain range on the planet, home to 14 peaks that exceed 8,000 meters, including Mount Everest, which scrapes the sky at 8,849 meters. That's 29,032 feet. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Commercial aircraft typically cruise at somewhere between 30,000 and 40,000 feet. That sounds like plenty of room above Everest, right? Wrong. Because in aviation, the altitude of the ground beneath you doesn't just matter for what you can see, it matters for what you can do in an emergency. And in the Himalayas, in an emergency, you can do almost nothing. There's a concept in aviation called ETOPS, Extended Range Twin Engine Operational Performance Standards. It's a set of international rules that govern how far a commercial aircraft can fly from the nearest viable emergency airport at any given moment. But before we even get to that, there's a more fundamental rule. It's called the minimum safe altitude, and it requires that at all times a commercial aircraft must fly high enough to safely glide to a safe emergency landing zone if both engines fail. Over most of the world, this is fine. You're over flat land or ocean or low hills, you have options. But fly over the Himalayas, your minimum safe altitude shoots up to 25,000 feet just to clear the terrain. And at 25,000 feet, you're flying so close to the mountain peaks that there is zero margin for error. One unexpected vertical wind gust, something the Himalayas are famous for. And you're not flying anymore, you're falling. And it gets worse. At high altitude, if cabin pressure fails, oxygen masks drop from the ceiling. You've probably seen that in the safety demo you never pay attention to. Here's what the safety demo doesn't tell you. Those masks, they provide oxygen for 12 to 15 minutes. That's it. Under normal circumstances, that's enough time for the pilot to perform an emergency descent, drop the plane down to a safe altitude where the air is breathable on its own. The standard emergency descent takes the plane down to about 10,000 feet. But over the Himalayas, 10,000 feet is underground. You cannot descend to breathable air because breathable air is below solid rock. And that means the oxygen masks become almost meaningless. By the time you reach safe altitude, if you ever do, those 15 minutes are long gone. This is why pilots call the Himalayas the coffin corner of the sky. But the altitude and oxygen problem? That's just Chapter 1. Chapter 2 is the weather. The Himalayan region generates some of the most violent and unpredictable atmospheric conditions on Earth. We're talking about jet streams, rivers of wind at 35,000 feet that can hit 200 miles per hour with zero warning. We're talking about mountain waves. These are massive waves of turbulent air created when fast-moving wind crashes into the mountain peaks below, bounces up, and creates an invisible roller coaster in the sky. Mountain wave turbulence has been recorded at altitudes above 50,000 feet, far higher than commercial jets fly. In 1966, a BOAC Boeing 707, a perfectly functioning aircraft with an experienced crew, broke apart in mid-air over Mount Fuji in Japan. The cause? A mountain wave so powerful it snapped the plane into pieces at 15,000 feet. And Fuji is less than half the height of Everest. Now imagine those same forces but 5 times larger. And the third weather problem? Icing. At altitude, Moisture in the air freezes onto aircraft surfaces. Modern aircraft have anti-icing systems, but they're designed for normal icing conditions. In the Himalayan corridor, icing can occur so rapidly and so severely that it overwhelms even the best systems. Combine extreme altitude, catastrophic oxygen math, jet streams, mountain waves, rapid icing, no emergency airports within reach. And now you understand why pilots look at the Himalayan airspace on their maps and simply route around it every time. Here's something that will blow your mind. Flights from cities like London, Dubai, or Mumbai to cities in East Asia, Tokyo, Seoul, Hong Kong, often look like they're taking a bizarre detour on a map. They seem to curve away from what looks like a more direct path. That's not a mistake. That's the Himalayan detour. Planes flying between South Asia and East Asia will often swing significantly north or south of the Himalayan plateau, adding hundreds of extra miles to the journey. Some routes between India and China, which should be short hops, take dramatically longer because of the airspace they must avoid. In fact, when the Soviets opened up the Trans-Siberian Air Corridor in the early 1990s, it was a game changer for aviation, not just because it unlocked Russian airspace, but because it gave airlines a new northern route that genuinely avoided the Himalayan problem entirely. Airlines pay for extra fuel, passengers sit for extra hours, aircraft take on extra weight just to carry that extra fuel. And all of it is cheaper and safer than flying over the mountains. That's how serious this is. The aviation industry would rather burn millions of dollars in additional fuel costs every single year than risk the Himalayan corridor. Let that sink in. Now, because the internet loves a technicality, let me address this before the comments fill up. Do planes fly near the Himalayas? Yes. Are there military aircraft, research aircraft, and high-altitude jets that have gone over Everest? Yes. The U-2 spy plane, for example, was designed specifically to fly at extreme altitudes, and there have been small aircraft and helicopters that have landed on Everest's summit. But commercial passenger aircraft? The ones carrying you, your mother, your kids? No. There is a strict international aviation protocol, backed by the FAA, ICAO, and every major civil aviation authority on Earth, that effectively prohibits commercial passenger flights from transiting the core Himalayan plateau. It's not technically a hard law that says, "Thou shalt not fly over Everest." It's something more powerful than a law. It's physics. And physics doesn't negotiate. There is also one other category of no-fly zone worth mentioning, and it's very different in nature. The airspace over the Tibetan Plateau and parts of Western China is also restricted for political reasons. China maintains strict control over who flies where in that region. So in a strange twist, the most dangerous natural airspace on Earth is also one of the most politically restricted airspaces on Earth. Nature and governments both agree. Nobody flies over this place. There's something almost humbling about this story. We live in an age when we have put telescopes in orbit, when we've landed robots on Mars, when our phones can navigate us to any address on Earth with pinpoint accuracy. We've tamed almost every environment this planet has to offer. We've drilled into the deepest ocean floor. We've built cities in the middle of deserts. We've sent humans to the moon. But the Himalayas? The Himalayas don't care. That stretch of frozen, violent, ancient sky remains, after a century of aviation, essentially untouchable by the machines we're most proud of. And maybe that's okay. Maybe some places are supposed to be left alone. Maybe the fact that there's still somewhere on this Earth that our engineering cannot safely cross is a feature, not a bug. The mountains were here 50 million years before us. They'll be here long after our last airplane has landed for the final time. And in the meantime, every pilot who plots a course through Asia quietly draws a line around them on a map and picks another way home. If you found this fascinating, and I hope you did, then you're going to love some of the other videos on this channel. We've covered the strangest borders on Earth, the roads no GPS can navigate, and the ocean zones so deep, no sunlight has ever touched them. The world is stranger and more extraordinary than most people ever get to see. So subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell, and let me know in the comments. Did you know about the Himalayan no-fly zone before today? I'll see you in the next one.